So this is it's important to, this is the real, I'm somewhat of a Buddhist temperament. Dalai Lama has great things to share. So this is the spirit in which I'm talking about these rules. You have to know what rules to break, and there's lots of things that we accept in our head that are, we have to break them in order to make progress. And a lot of this presentation, particularly relevant for India, I'm going to talk about this whole topic of employability. Because company is a software company in particular, but any company is people. If you don't solve the people part of your equation, nothing else matters. Your technology, your product, all that, if you don't get the people right, you don't have a company, actually. So it's extremely important to pay attention to this. And this is typical, you get a headline, you'll see 47% of graduates in India are unemployable for any job. It's common. We have read this all. And you have something even more. Actually, NASSCOM study says 90% of graduates and 70% of engineers are unemployable. So whichever you pick, whichever version you like. Is it 47%? Is it 90%? In fact, you go and do Indian engineers unemployable, you'll find both. So this is typical. Well, this is the only fact I know. I don't know whichever is fact, but 100% of us are unemployable when we are born. We can start that as a baseline, right? That's a good baseline. But in fact, it goes a lot deeper. I'm going to actually talk a lot about my own experience, what actually I experienced. Because one of the things Buddhist practice teaches is intense observation. Whatever experience you have, observe. And this was my observation. Even during IIT, I had a lot of these thoughts. Why am I in this class? Kind of a thing. And so I'm going to list a sampling of courses in which I gained zero understanding, no knowledge. And I used to maybe attend a few classes and decide I don't get anything at all out of it. So that is television engineering, fiber optics, antenna engineering, microwave engineering, DC, AC motors, robotics. All of them are classes I took. These were all in my transcript. Many of them will have A or S grade. Many of them A or S. S is the highest grade in IIT, but usually A. So, but even at that time I knew I didn't know any of these subjects. While taking the final exam, I actually don't know anything in this. So, in fact, one of the things the Indian school system teaches you is you can be a very good student without knowing anything at all. I was one of them. So, because you learn to kind of game the system. The exam is the game. You learn to play the game. I was good at it. Actually, I was good at that game. But I also knew it was a game, and I also knew I didn't know any of this. So it was the only useful thing at that time. In fact, the television engineering is particularly interesting. My father is here. When I finished this IIT and we had a problem with TV at home, he asked me, "You are a BTech in electronics. You should know this, right?" I said, "I only got an A in the class. I don't know television. I don't know television engineering." "What are you assuming? You're assuming that because I take a class, I know this?" He was, let's say, not very amused. Here is IIT BTech who was just telling this. But there was the truth. I told him the truth. I actually don't know television engineering. Okay? I just took a class and I got an A in this. So by that standard of whatever any employer would look, I was unemployable after my BTech.
Maybe Sridhar has been very polite about how my father says it. So actually what he said is, we were 3 engineers at the time at home. So he said, we have 3 engineers at home, 3 fit-for-nothing engineers at home. So I still have to call the electrician, plumber, and TV mechanic.
Yeah, it was true. But this was what BTech from IIT Madras got me. I actually, if I had got, you remember in 1989, some of the jobs that you could get as an electronics engineer was in the television industry was kind of doing well at that time. They would come for campus recruitment. Remember, IT was not big yet. Infosys had maybe, 300 employees or something, 400 employees at that time. I do remember them coming to campus, but they were not the main employer. That electronics companies would come. But I actually didn't know any of this. But I did have very good grades. In fact, Princeton gave me a full scholarship. So this is true story, okay? So Princeton, I went to Princeton. There I had an even more interesting experience. So I went to Princeton, and I thought of myself as a very mathematical brain at the time. So I wanted a very interesting professor to do a PhD with. My advisor, Dr. Verdu, was Dr. CDMA. He was considered the leading expert in CDMA in academia at that time. In fact, he was supposed to have opened a new pathway in research in CDMA at that time. And I took advanced classes, graduate level classes, MS, PhD with him in CDMA. And I, of course, got good grades, that was something you learn early on childhood, Indian childhood, is how to go to the exam and do well. That was one of the training I had. And actually, this was coincidental. The fact that I took classes in CDMA wasn't the reason I joined Qualcomm. I wanted to become a professor, but I couldn't. At that time, there was no academic jobs to be found. I really did the PhD with the intent that I'll become a professor. I didn't get a job. Then this company, fledgling company called Qualcomm, was hiring. And they hired me mainly because I have a Princeton PhD. That's it. They don't check anything. And that's when I made a shocking discovery. My first 6 months or 1 year on the job was profoundly shocking to me, because my PhD was in information theory. For those of you who know, that's the mathematical theory of communications. That's the foundation, mathematical foundation on which your wireless, your cable modems, all that is built. So I realized actually I have a PhD in that subject from Princeton. Then I go to work and I actually truly don't have a full understanding. In fact, my understanding was kind of fragmented. There were some very key core ideas. You got lost in the mathematics, the core ideas were missing. I realized it was a shock. And in fact, if Qualcomm had bothered to test me on that understanding, I would not have gotten hired. Actually, it was true. In fact, I remember I called up a postdoc who was still there in Princeton and told him, first thing you do is you quit this damn postdoc, because what you know is shit. I told him. I'm telling you now, I know this, what you know is shit. I told him. Actually, I remember he's a professor in Israel now. He was a close friend of mine, and I told him, hey, what we know, it's not true. What we know is actually not the real stuff. So, but then Qualcomm had hired me only because I had the PhD. There was no other reason. They just assumed I should know. But I went there and learned. And I was actually ashamed. I thought, man, I have a PhD in the subject. So I proceeded to teach myself real stuff and real CDMA on the job. In fact, there is what I learned was the CDMA research, which was pioneered by my advisor and taught to graduate students across all the major US universities, and had a terrible flaw, in my opinion. It was profoundly different from the actual CDMA Qualcomm was working on. Totally different. In fact, to call them both CDMA was a misnomer, I realized. So I ended up writing a paper. This was published in '96. You can see my co-author. That was actually the co-founder of Qualcomm. Dr. Viterbi is, you can say, genuinely one of the heroes of telecommunications. I mean, if wireless networks work because of Dr. Viterbi, his Viterbi algorithm. Those of you who have any electrical engineering or communication background will know his name. If there were a Nobel Prize in things like engineering, Viterbi would be in the top 10 people in the world would have got it. So it turned out he agreed with me when he wasn't aware of what was going on in academia. He had left academia long before and founded Qualcomm. I explained to him my discovery and he said, let's write a paper. Because what you have found is very interesting, shocking. So we wrote a paper and that ended my forever any hope of academic career because this directly contradicted my advisor, which in academia that's suicide basically. So, but one thing that I really learned from that episode, this is like I spent 4 years on the PhD, but I realized the most important education for me came on the job. On the job. It didn't come from the PhD at all. And this view has actually powered a lot of our philosophy today. That lesson I learned then, that I learned to pretty much disregard all academic credentials after that. I don't at all care if somebody has a PhD, MBA, IIM, IIT, nothing. I absolutely disregard all that. Personally, I just don't pay attention to any of it because I know the real how it has worked. There were actually lots of professors minted in those mills of academia who are professors now, grad students at the time, who pursued that same garbage. They pursued forever. So lots of them became tenured professors later. So then why do we complain about this whole unemployability issue? I would say if you are in business, if you think of yourself an entrepreneur, your job is to solve the problem of the skill, not say somebody is unemployable. That's not what we get paid to do. That's not what I always felt I get paid to do, based on my own experience. So this is something that, the first thing that I want you to take away from this, the skill development is a core part of your business, any business. You have to have a skill development as integral to your strategy, which has been the core idea behind Zoho. A lot of from early days, actually, Kumar's first thing would be, when he hires an engineer, he would go through the whole kernel programming at that time. The first exercises Kumar would do is Unix kernel programming. You would teach this to complete newbies. People will come with not even a C, nothing, no knowledge. He would teach. He was teaching. Kumar was teaching, actually. Most of what he was doing was actually teaching in the company. So that skill development is a core part of any business. And that's one of the reasons why we have retained people so well, is because people felt they actually learned on this job. There was more education than job. That's what people have always felt. And I'm going to just cover one more topic now, and then I'll have the other things I'll come as gets. And this whole idea of the software professional, I want to challenge that idea. Let's talk about it. First, what do we think of as software professional? Well, first, competence that comes in. Credentials, certifications, depending on the job, maybe certified J2E developer or certified whatever, Cisco certified, all of those kinds of credentials and certifications. But it's also, the professional word conveys this idea that you could fit into a well-defined role and perform smoothly. That's comes with that idea, right? That's how our mental image is. The professional means there's a role defined and they could fit in and perform well. But there's also kind of a generic, when you say software professional, you remove a personality from it. You remove a person from it. There's something generic about it. One professional could replace another. That's also part of that whole idea. So competence, credentials, role, defined, certification. There's something missing though in all this. It turns out that missing ingredient is far, far, far more important than all of this, because those missing ingredients can easily supply all this. Passion, art, emotion. These are the kinds of things, the word professional doesn't convey any of this. And then also conviction. What do you believe in? A professional is Today, I could be a Java programmer, and in working on the cloud. And as a professional, I could smoothly shift into maybe a Microsoft programmer, and then something else, then something else. Because you are not supposed to have any strong convictions, no vision. It's part of my conviction, for example, why we coded in Java and not Windows in the early days is we could never come to trust Microsoft. This is not a knock on Satya now. He inherited a karma that he didn't create. But in 95, as an early engineer, I felt this is a company that never to be trusted. If you ask in Silicon Valley, 90% of the people will agree with me on this statement. Microsoft is a company never to be trusted. So that's the karma that Satya will have to overcome, and he's trying hard to overcome it. I wish him good luck, but that is part of why we chose Linux, Java, all that. That is conviction and vision. It's not just pragmatic choice. It was based on something not logical. Microsoft was a successful company even at that time. But we said, if Windows code is my profession, I'll change my profession. That was my attitude. So the reason it's important is in product industry, products encode convictions, not just competence. It's not enough to be just competent. You have to have convictions. In fact, each of these will be expanded. There's a big whole entire session on this, on convictions. And products need passion, not just professionalism. You have to have something other than, those things are not captured in any grade sheet, any transcript. These convictions, passion, you cannot measure them at all. They are intrinsically unmeasurable. There's no way to rate somebody on their passion. I'll rate this guy 8 on passion, 6 on conviction. It's bullshit, right? You know how ridiculous that sounds. So these are not measurable, but these are vitally important. So we say we need craftsmen, not professionals. It's a different image that we have in Zoho of who we need, what our people are, craftsmen, not professionals. By the way, all this artwork is created in Zoho. Excellent artist who's, we increasingly look at a lot of our work as also art, not just code. Art and code, emotion and logic, all that is important. So this idea, this whole craftsman and not professional, is captured in India it's known, the Gurukul model, and then we have the German apprenticeship model. These two are well worth studying. I study a lot of German, and the Japanese have had similar ideas too. All of them going back before many of these established. In fact, Germany is a leading industrial power because of this system. Germany has put its people best to work in the world. Their people are the best used, and that's because of this system. So keep that as a key takeaway, that your professionalism, you have to rethink that word. You have to see what it means. Finally, I talked about my own academic credentials, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit now. We think, these are all the typical, right? This is how probably your company is requiring this person, what I've listed here. MS in computer science, big data expert, machine learning, compiler, whatever, right? And in fact, there was an article in New York Times, February 28, 2009. Marissa Mayer was in Google at the time. And this is a verbatim quote taken from an article. She rejects a resume. They were doing resume reviews. She rejects a resume because a computer science student had a C in macroeconomics. This was Google. Google used to be paying attention to all this. This is a quote from her, New York Times. So, C in macroeconomics. Which is, I'm sure some of you may have shared this kind of a belief, right? It's not uncommon. I don't know about you. When I read that, I thought of my C. Actually, it's true. This is an interesting story because there was a class, again, one of the classes that I really had no personal interest, but this one required actual work as opposed to just hacking the exam, right? You have to go to the lab, code it, all that. I wouldn't show up. Or I had I actually had a friend at the time also. There's another partner in crime in IIT days. His name also is Shailesh. I used to joke to Shailesh. The name Shailesh means this guy has to be my partner in crime in all this. So he would do some of the work for me in IIT, Shailesh. He's a professor of physics now. So, and the professor detected it actually, that I wasn't doing much. So she handed me a C. I went to argue with her. Say, hey, C, come on, it's not a. She said I should give you a F. U, right? But it's a humanitarian C. So get out of the room. So I settled for the humanitarian C on that. So now speaking of these academic credentials, here is an interesting experience. The self-driving car, we all think of Google as a self-driving car, right? There was actually a DARPA challenge in 2005. That was the very first time cars were demonstrated that could finish the challenge. It was something like 50, 100 miles in the Nevada desert, where the car has no driver, it has to drive itself to the destination, over 50 to 100 miles. That was the challenge. Until 2004, no one finished the course. It was like a really tough course. 2005, 3 or 4 teams finished it. But one was a Stanford team. There was a couple of other teams, I don't remember. The Stanford team, I believe, finished first. But the team that finished at the time that was most interesting was in Louisiana, New Orleans, there was a company called Gray Insurance. It's a very little company. No one has heard of them, right? Their IT department, insurance programmers, decided to take part in this competition. The story was well covered after that event because these guys, they asked, how did you learn to do this programming for this car thing? They learned to code video games, driving, and that's how they learned that first, and then they took part in the competition. And they finished the course. The first time anybody finished the course that year, they finished the course. Their car finished the course. And they almost came first. They would have been first with a small twist. So here is an interview by that. How did an insurance company from suburban New Orleans, those of you who know anything about it, New Orleans is not the tech hotbed, right? So, Popular Science. From Popular Science, they learned the challenge. And, well, they were crazy enough to attempt it, that's all. True story. You can go look up this DARPA challenge 2005. Take this Gray Insurance company, check it on Google. Read that story because it's really inspiring. It's very important. Because it tells you a lot of things that you might suspect, but it's actually true that you don't need. Look, the Stanford guys finished, but these guys also finished. And this is if you know anything about New Orleans, is the opposite side of the world from Stanford, right? So. In fact, in Zoho, I come from IIT. Shailesh comes from IIT. We counted, there's only actually 3 IITians in the entire company. 3. So it's not that we discriminate against IITians. It's just that they find us, we take them. That's how it is. And in fact, 300 out of 2,500 people never went to college. No. This year, it will be another 100 added. There's another 100 in our stream right now. In fact, there is one kid there, which is very interesting. We always found some unusual kids in this thing. This kid is actually from Assam. He came to us as a security guard. A lot of Assam, a lot of the Northeast, a lot of people come. In your offices, I'm sure you have these. Right? In these days in Bangalore and Chennai, there's lots of them, immigrants from the north.
Telling that story.
Okay, he is going to tell that story, full story. But one of the managers noticed, he showed an unusual amount of interest in code. He came in and he would check on, he would use the computer, he will beg to borrow the computer to do stuff. Raj will share the full story, he has his photos, all that. And we said, okay, he had only finished 10th standard, by the way, in Assam. And he speaks very, obviously, little English and no Tamil. We enrolled him in Zoho University anyway. He's doing extremely well, actually. He's doing extremely well. One of our best students this year. So you have unusual talent all around you. Right here in India, I mean, we have so much talent. And in fact, Zoho Creator, which is our language, our development tool, which is getting bigger and bigger because this is becoming the Zoho platform. This is the IDE and platform for all of Zoho now. And Zoho itself is becoming a kind of an operating system for business. That's how we call it now. And this is the development environment for the operating system. It's just all evolving in the direction. No one in the team has computer science background and no one has taken a compiler class. And they are developing a compiler. They have developed a compiler. We have a next advanced version coming. So, and several of the compiler team is actually Zoho University students. Most of the compiler team. This is true experimental observation. By the way, this is not some theory. I'm not teaching you theory. Academic record absolutely does not matter. We have seen this repeatedly. We have seen this over. How many trials do you have to perform to know this? We have performed all of them. So you have to really, really, really take this to heart, because if you are in a startup, this problem you solve. You solve your people problem and you actually help our society. Because in our society, this is becoming way too important, this whole credentialism, right? Where how many strings of degrees you can attach to your name, but in the workplace, it does not matter. You absolutely, you will see it, absolute evidence when you hire. So. Now I'm going to just finish this with last thing. I think it's gone on too long already, the interviewing. Typical Google puzzler. You know? So I'm sure you've heard about these, right? These puzzle interview questions. I'm sure some of you are using these kinds of questions. Right? Then how many gas stations are in New York City? Estimate that, right? Not that these are not interesting puzzlers, or not even, maybe they measure something. Or this one. Which even sounds nonsensical to me. I don't know what it means. So, but here's the thing, right? Interviews, this is the problem. Somebody could have aged all this, could have given you the perfect answer. Even they could age everything. I've seen these kind of people where extremely good at the interviewing part, right? But they produce these static snapshots of people. You get that one day or whatever picture of a person. But in reality, people are dynamic. You have the capacity to learn and you have the capacity to adapt. Actually, I went to Qualcomm and I realized what I didn't know and I learned, which is what most people do. Most people realize my job requires it, I need this. My job now requires compilers, let me figure it out. That's what people do all the time. So, capable of learning and adaptation. And it also includes gaming systems and subverting authority. That comes with it. These are not things that you can ever measure in an interview. Right? Would this person game systems? Would he be political? Subvert authority? Whatever. Right? All of these. We are all complex beings. Infinite dimensional. What a person is. It's not n-dimensional, infinite dimensional. There's so many things to a person, right? So this is what I say. People are intrinsically unknowable and unpredictable. You can never truly know. In fact, it goes beyond this, right? Well, it's a Buddhist wisdom, you know. It's hard enough to know just one person, that is myself, ourselves. How could you ever hope to know another person? Right? So, and yet we think that in interview we just assign some rankings, ratings, all that, as if we know, we truly know. So this is what I say, interviews generally lie. We have had these experiments again and again and again. Many, many managers have observed this, where they would have a really great hire, a person comes and performs so-so or lousy, or some cases fired, outright failure. Some person who was a borderline, maybe I'll give this person a shot. They turn out to become the best person they ever hired. Again and again, we have observed these phenomena. In fact, I'm going to call two of our managers, Tom and Jerry, protecting the names of the guilty here. Tom is a tester. He believes in tests. In fact, in our company, it's so diverse now, we have different schools of. So whenever you read something about Zoho, some fact, there's probably two managers who believe in the fact and two managers who don't. So that's what happens to any diverse company, right? It's not everything cannot be just whatever I lay down or whatever. No, people have their own beliefs. They have to. Most people have to learn the truths themselves, whatever it is. So Tom is a tester, and Jerry will hire a person and help them along, figure out what they can do. And I asked Tom one day, so what do you think is your success rate with all your methodology? You hire so many people. How many of them worked out for you? He said, I've calculated the number too, 62%. So, and I asked Jerry to estimate it, he'd say about 60%. In fact, Tom acknowledged to me that, after all the work I put into this, I actually don't get that 90%, 95%, 100% that I expected. So maybe I'll stop doing this because it's too much work for too little return. If the difference is just this little, 62% and about 60%, then what do you get from all the rigor? So you want to internalize that lesson too. This is actually the truth. We observed it from hiring lots and lots of people. In fact, there is a follow-up article on Google last year. Google has abandoned grades, GPA, all of that now. Test scores, all that, finally. And of course, they crunched all the numbers. They went through all the stats. They had to know. I would have told them 8 years ago, 10 years ago this. Because you don't need numbers. You observe, you will see this, what I just said. So they have dropped all this grade and all that requirement because they found that there was no correlation. That it had no predictive power. Somebody had excellent grades, that doesn't predict what their performance would be, or somebody had lousy grades, that doesn't predict performance. So I'm going to actually stop my keynote with this. I have a few more roles we break. I'm going to keep them as nuggets in between sessions because I think we have lots of sessions coming up. I want to give our speakers a good opportunity to present, and we will present on location, on venture capital, all those topics are coming. And this domain knowledge is crucial. There's so many things Zoho does which we didn't know how to do when we started. Absolute truth. We didn't know CRM, we didn't know accounting, we didn't know most things we do now. So with that, I'm going to finish my keynote and take some questions. Then I'll let the already. Thank you.